We entered summer with high hopes for our garden. After bumper spring harvests of some of our favourite vegetables, including broad beans, carrots, parsnips, radishes and artichokes. We had sown a variety of tomato, pepper, cucurbit, ornamental, medicinal and salad seeds. The gardens we'd planted in autumn had grown so well over the winter and spring months. They were looking quite wild and in desperate need of a makeover. We'd planted garlic and onions at the start of winter, and we were impressed by their growth over the spring months. Our seedlings were planted at the start of summer, and the garden bloomed with a foretelling of abundance. Wild clover and thyme lined the paths, with our new seedlings pert in the sunshine. By late spring, our beans were already flowering and providing for us. The long, hot summer days meant things grew quickly, and we were harvesting cucumbers within weeks of planting the seedlings. We even had a volunteer watermelon pop up in one of the more unkempt garden beds, producing us 2 plump and delicious watermelons in a matter of weeks. We harvested our onions and garlics in the new year, and whilst one variety bolted before going to bulb, as we suspect we got the timing wrong for sowing them, the rest of our varieties were dried out in the shed and then tied together and hung in the cool of our house. Devastatingly, the summer proved too long, too hot and too dry for a significant harvest of any of our summer crops in the autumn. With no real rain since early spring, we had to turn our irrigation off as the water level of our dam had dropped to the lowest we'd ever seen. This was despite our efforts to have the dam completely full by the end of winter. The lack of rain and the long sunny days meant all our precious water was evaporating quickly, and we needed to maintain what we had so we could water our animals. I took to hand watering with a baby in tow the plants that were in the dappled shade that were managing to survive the intense heat. Apart from an early season bush variety determinate tomato, we had very little luck with our tomato plants this year and virtually no harvest. This was such a contrast to the abundant tomato harvest that we'd had the previous year in our very first summer garden. It was such a sad and sorry state of affairs, and the weather was still so brutally hot in February and March that we didn't feel much in our garden until April, where we harvested some of the crops that had managed to survive the ordeal. Root vegetables like potatoes, parsnips and carrots had, thankfully, kept nicely under the ground in the dry dirt, despite their green tops dying off from lack of water. The beans that were left on our dead bush bean plants had dried out nicely, so we now had seeds to plant for the next spring. There's even enough for us to use soaked and cooked in soups this winter if required.
So our garden has been pretty neglected over the last 3 or 4 months actually. By about February, we had to turn off the irrigation because our dam level had dropped so low, and to be honest, a lot of the plants in here just got really cooked from the really hot weather we had. We just had continuous days over 40 degrees and nothing really made it without us erecting shade structures, which we just didn't find the time to do with a new little baby on board and all the other things going on at the homestead. So The garden got a little bit neglected. We still got a harvest for ourselves. We just didn't have a massive harvest for preserving like we did last year, and abundance to share with other people. So we're still happy with how our garden performed. It's just a lot of it died from the heat and the sun and all that. We've still got a really nice crop of peppers coming through, but everything else, it's really time for it to be ripped out, start again, and I'm running out of time to get my garlic in. So at the moment I'm just going to prepare the 2 back beds. It'd be good to put that crop down and then to start focusing on planting some of our other vegetables for winter. I've got a whole lot of brassicas and they've sprouted and they're in the little seedling pots, so hopefully next week I can start putting them in the ground. And I'm also going to plant a whole lot of onions again. I really enjoyed having onions. I'm not going to be removing any of the remaining plants that are sort of alive in here still. I'm just going to Dutch hoe them. So we've got dahlias here. I've got an old fennel plant. I'll just Dutch hoe the dahlias and hopefully they'll come up first thing in spring, instead of me pulling them out, storing them and having to replant them in springtime. So the reason why I'm Dutch hoeing everything and not actually pulling all the plants out by the roots is that I don't want to disturb the good micrology that's going on in the soil here. We have been very meticulous about not digging our garden and just keep top dressing it with compost and manure, like as a fertilizer. I'm going to be leaving this. This is an apple tree that sprouted feral from the apples that we've collected from Ladycroft and Newton Orchards. So I'm leaving this because we're going to keep this as additional shade. We've just found that in the summertime it's just too hot in these garden beds, especially if we get another summer like what we just had. It will be really good to have that dappled shade for our vegetables so they actually survive. They just can't deal with the heat. So it's nicer to have a tree than to have to erect shade cloth, it get damaged in the UV and all those sorts of things. So nice to have deciduous trees, no leaves in the winter, so that the crops can grow, and then lots of shade in the summer to just stop that really intense heat on our plants, on our more fragile vegetables and things like that. So I've chosen these beds for the garlic this year because last year the garlic beds got quite full of weeds. Up here on this end we don't get as much invading grasses coming in or weed seeds as we do on the other side where they just come straight off the hill. Here it's a bit elevated, so, and there's this metal corrugated iron that separates the grass from the actual bed and divides it a lot better. So I'm just raking this manure out across the bed.
Once I had all the manure down in an even layer, I laid out an equal amount of compost for planting our garlic into.
So you can see this garden bed here, the only thing that survived the long hot summer was this weed, but it's also edible. It's warrigal greens, and we actually talked about it in a video when we were in Queensland on the Sunshine Coast. So it's a really great substitute for spinach. Tastes really similar to spinach once it's cooked. It's not very good raw. It's got like quite a lot of oxalic acid, so it's sort of got like it leaves quite a soury, not very nice aftertaste in your mouth if you don't cook it. So tonight I haven't defrosted any meat, and I made some paneer last week with some defrosted goat's milk. So I'm going to make us a paneer, saag paneer curry, so spinach and paneer cheese curry with this warrigal greens, because it's one of the only things that's still going in our garden at the moment. We've got peppers and chilies going, and that's about it. There's some herbs and a few other things that have survived the summer and the strawberries. But apart from that, everything needs to be replanted, removed, and yeah, get a new set of crops for winter. I've already picked from here, but yeah, this is in the path and it's just growing so lush. I will just pick food for dinner and then we'll let it grow back. Okay, so I found a little weather window. I think we're going to be getting rain this afternoon, so it's the middle of the day. This morning I came down with the baby and just finished putting the compost over the top of all the manure and then raked it flat, and then I used the end of the Dutch hoe here just to dib the holes. You almost don't need to make holes, you can just shove the clove down into the garlic, like down with your thumb. But I like to have the holes just so I got my spacing right, and I don't lose my place that way. I might end up with multiple cloves of garlic in the same spot if I don't have the holes there to cover up as I go. So I've put one lot of garlic from a friend, so I got another variety this year, quite a larger garlic bulb than these ones. And then this is a mix here. I've got these beautiful purple ones. They were my favourite last year, and then these white ones as well, like a hard neck variety. These are a soft neck variety. They all gave me really delicious scapes at the start of summer, and they've all actually done really well. They're not sprouting, they haven't gone soft, they've stayed really nice and firm and hard. So I've got about double, nearly triple this left for the rest of winter until we harvest all of this garlic, this whole bed, next summer. So there should be plenty for us next summer and going through the year for next year. So I literally just putting them in, making sure that the base, the root end of the bulb is pointing down and the pointy end's pointing up so the sprout can come straight up. And that's pretty much it. Garlic's pretty simple. I'm just putting it down about a thumb width down, so 2 inches, pushing it in 2 or 3 inches down just so that there's an inch above the top of the clove of soil. Yeah, and hopefully this all works out in this spot. I did have onions growing in here last winter, so hopefully that's not too much of the same allium thing going on, but I have topped it up with a whole lot of fresh soil and things like that, so I'm hoping that it will be fine. Garlic's cool because you can just put it in, watch it grow over 6 months, and you don't have to do anything else in the bed except watch it grow. Pick some delicious scapes at the start of summer and then harvest them a couple of months later. I had a really nice time learning how to tie garlic and the onions that I grew last summer, so hopefully I can do the same again this summer. We're all done. By some sort of, my powers of estimation must be amazing. I've ended up with maybe 10 cloves here, so one whole bulb and a couple of little cloves. So yeah, I actually didn't think, I thought I came down with too much, but I definitely came down with just the right amount. So this is all planted out. I don't have to worry about this bed now for a while. Just got to keep my eye on it and weed anything that comes up. But this is a better spot than where I planted garlic last year, where we had the grass invading in and a lot of the herbs growing out of control. This year I've got nothing else planted in here, just the garlic, and we'll be able to manage it. And then as soon as we harvest, we'll replant with a new crop in summertime. Such a satisfying feeling to have gotten that garlic out. This is the first big lot of rain we've had in a couple of weeks now. We had a downpour at the start of a little bit earlier in the month, but yeah, this is some really nice rain, and I think it's going to set in now for the next 4 or 5 days, so really exciting to get that garlic in the ground. I'm looking forward to planting some more things in the ground soon. At least it'll be nice and wet for the next lot of things. I've got some seedlings on the go. I just need to build the beds, so might be putting the wet weather gear on and building the beds in the drizzle, but really happy we got the garlic in. So here's my garlic bed that we put in mid-May, so roughly 6 or 7 weeks ago, and I'm really pleased with how everything's progressing. You can actually see that we've got different varieties here, so they're throwing different shoots up, just so we're going to have different sized bulbs. I think maybe some will mature earlier. We'll see whether I can harvest them all at one time at the beginning of the year, so in midsummer. Yeah, but they've done really, really well. I actually haven't done anything over the last 7 weeks. I literally just put the cloves in and left them be. And we didn't get much rain in June. It was very, very dry. So they managed okay with that big lot of rain that we got in May when I planted them. And then now it's just started raining again. So the soil's nice and wet again, but they seem to be totally fine. That's pretty much it for garlic. I'll have to come back to you in 6 months' time when we harvest these. But really a wonderful crop to grow, I think, because it means you can I use garlic a lot in my cooking, and it means you can use something from the garden in every meal that you make. Whether or not you have grown everything or the produce is your own, at least you can say that the garlic is your own. And organic garlic is extremely expensive at the supermarket. So when something's so easy to grow with no pesticides or anything really required organically, then I don't see why you shouldn't give it a try. So you saw me doing it. Honestly, it's not any more complicated than that. I'm happy where I've chosen this year because we've got a lot less weeds in this bed already, and I'll be able to just go through and occasionally pull out any seeds that have sprouted in here that we don't want. But yeah, that's it for this garden. I did actually for winter renovate the garden in front of me here. It was just another really crazy dry month in June, and I'm really grateful that July has hit and now it's actually raining. So I got the bed set up in there, but nothing's really done that well yet. Everything's fine, but it's not really growing because we haven't had that rain. So here it is. Doesn't look like much yet, and as you can see, there's a really interesting, this has only happened in the last week, but I've noticed that there's a really interesting grey kind of mycelium network happening along the top of the compost that I put down. So along here, I just took half a bucket of compost and just plonked it on top of my mulch. So I had manure and then mulch, and then I just plonked half a bucket of compost on top, and then just put in the middle of that compost my seedlings. So these are broccoli seedlings, and they look like they're doing okay. They've definitely grown. They've got new shoots in here. And yeah, I don't think I'm going to touch this or adjust this, because hopefully this is a good network here, protecting the plant and keeping moisture and everything doing well. For these broccoli seedlings. I know that broccoli seedlings are quite a hungry plant. So yeah, we've got plenty of manure under here. I actually can see this section of the bed here, we had some leftover spent brewery grain, so I put that in under the bed as well, just to feed the plants. So yeah, they seem to be doing really well. In here, to my left, we have a whole row of potatoes. So for these ones, I stuck the potatoes in with the mulch, and then I just put bucket loads of compost over the top. And I'm starting to see some potatoes come through, potato shoots come through, but I suspect a lot of the work at the moment is just happening in that mulch. They might be growing tubers, but we'll start to see the shoots coming through soon. They are, I've heard that they are not frost hardy potatoes, but I did do the potato row in the middle here because I actually have some fleece up the house. So if we get any frost this winter, which might not happen, to be honest, because it's already the middle of July and we haven't had any frost. But if we have any frost forecast, I'll be able to roll out fleece over the top of these potatoes, and that should protect them from that frost. But the brassicas and then also the onions that I've planted in this bed over here, they are fine with frost. So you can't really see anything here yet, but I've put some spinach in here, and I direct sowed a whole heap of onions all along here. And I was worried that they weren't going to come up, but I've just seen today, I think with this whole lot of rain that we've had in July and some of the warmer, sunnier days now, the longer day length, they've started to come up. So these are late season onions, you can sow them at the end of winter, and they should mature all through spring and summer, and we can harvest them at the end of summer. But I have noticed that the seeds that I direct sowed, they've germinated and there's little plants coming up. So that's really exciting. I will thin them out and space them a bit better, but I just didn't have time to put them in punnets or to put them in a tray. I actually did try some in a tray and they didn't work. So I thought I'd just get a new lot of seeds. Maybe those old seeds that I had expired. So I bought a new lot of seeds and put them in, and they've come up. So that's really fantastic. And I will give you an update in summer to see how these onions have gone. But I suppose that's it for the garden update for now. It was a bit of a shame that we didn't get any of those massive autumn harvests that we had last year, but that was just a bit of an effect of the season. Such a dry, hot summer. And also we had a new baby with us, and we just didn't have the time to spend down here, especially in that really excruciating heat. The flies were really bad, the flies were biting us. And so we didn't really want to spend time in the garden. It was a bit of a hostile environment, to be honest, to have a baby down here in the middle of summer, so we just really let it go. And surprisingly, a lot of things did make it, but as you would have seen in this bed, most of the things died except for some of those hardy perennial weeds like the warrigal greens, which I've actually left in the path here because such a great plant, such a good ground cover in the summer when nothing else is growing, and actually really quite a tasty plant too. Hope you enjoyed this episode, taking you back through the last 6 or 7 months in the garden. And I hope that this sort of develops over the spring and we can share with you a more positive success story. As always, I really appreciate all your comments. So if you have any advice, gardening tips that you'd like to share with us, I really appreciate that. And I'm so grateful for those of you that support us financially. It is such a lovely job to put the camera out, chat with you and share with you our successes and failures over our time here down in the southwest of Australia. So thanks for joining us. A special thank you to our patrons, people that support us on PayPal, and those of you that give us super thanks. And I really look forward to seeing you next time.